invite you to find your sermon notes. And this is one of those messages today that I've seen some yawns here and there. This is not one of those days for yawns, okay? In fact, turn to your neighbor and say, get ready. We are continuing our series talking about skills for living as a disciple of Christ. And this morning I want to talk about the third step for a disciple, and that is when I resolve to live the rest of my life fulfilling the purpose God made me for. In other words, we're going to be talking today about commitment. Now, we live in a society that doesn't like to talk about commitments. We don't like making commitments. There's a fear of commitment. It's one of those things we really don't. In fact, they say that, I was reading, the number of people who live together instead of making a commitment to get married has risen 700% since 1970. And a lot of people, they don't want to commit to anything. But without commitment, there's no focus for your life. There is no persistence, no achievement, no real success. Commitment is the secret to effective living. It is when you focus all your energy and give your life to something. Now, I want to talk about a couple of passages that are the basis of this message, and both of them are found in the book of Romans, one from chapter 6, the other from chapter 12. Romans 6 says this, give yourselves completely, if you would underline that word completely, give yourselves completely to God to be used for His purposes. And then Romans 12, out of the Good News Translation says, offer yourselves as a living sacrifice to God. Then you'll be able to know the will of God that is good, pleasing, and perfect. Now, let me also invite you to underline those first words in both of those passages, to give and to offer. Now, I want to tell you that what we're going to talk about today is not just a one-time commitment. There are a lot of times in the Christian faith, we wish we could just do the one prayer and we're done. It doesn't work like that. This is not one of those. This is something that you are going to be dealing with in your life every single day. Sometimes you got to remind yourself moment by moment that it is a daily decision. And the decision is, God, as I wake up, okay, God, as I get started in the day, am I going to live the way I want? Or am I going to live the way you want me to? Am I going to live my own choices and do what I want with my life? Or am I going to live the life that you've created me to live? And in this passage, you even see it says to offer yourself, to make that commitment to God, and then you'll know the will of God. You offer yourself, then you'll be able to know the will of God. Now, we don't like it in that order. Most of us say, all right, God, I want you to tell me what you want from me first, and then I'll decide whether or not I want to really commit to that. God says over and over, you make the commitment first. I need to know that you trust me enough with your life. And when you say, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do with my life, then God says, now you're ready for me to tell you what that is. Why does He do it that way? It's because He wants to teach us faith. He wants us to trust Him. Now, this whole idea of making a commitment and trust, and this whole idea is going to be uncomfortable for some of us. Because this is an area that for so many of us, we've never fully stepped out in faith and put our lives completely in His hands. So I want to talk about, first of all, why I should even commit my life to Christ. Then I want to talk about some of the real obstacles that kind of keep me from taking that step. And then for for us, I want us to look at how we make a total commitment. So let's look first of all at why I should even give my life to Christ. First of all, it was what I was made for. That's why you were created. You know, some of us think, no, I was, you know, my parents, they were in the back of the car, and all of a sudden here I am, and it just happened to be, it's just the way it is, this is the way life is. And there are a lot of people don't realize you are not a surprise to God. God made you for a purpose. He knew your parents, no matter how good, bad, ugly, all that stuff. He knew your parents, and He knew the exact DNA that would cause you to come in to being. And in your life, He has a purpose. Galatians 1:15 reminds us, even before I was born, God chose me and called me by His marvelous grace. So many never make the connection as to why they were created. It wasn't random chance. God made you, and even before you were born, He chose you and called you by His grace. So the reason you're here, the reason you ought to give your life back to Him is because He was the one who made you. Second reason is He ultimately knows what's best for us. Now, I know this is the one we struggle with a lot because we think we know what's best for us. Look at Jeremiah 29:11. I love the Message paraphrase. It says, I know what I'm doing, says God. I have it all planned out. Plans to take care of you, not abandon you. Plans to give you the future you hope for. Who could know better about what's going to make you happy and what's going to fulfill your life more than the person who created you? So I should commit my life to God because it's what I was made for, and also because He knows what's best for me, and then number 3, because it's the key to my satisfaction and success in life. Again, we all think we know what's going to make us happy. But only God really knows what is going to fulfill us. God knows more than we do. There are whole areas of our lives that we've not even discovered yet. There are areas of our lives that we don't even understand, that we've not even thought of. And yet God, the one who knows us completely, who knows the good, the bad, and the ugly, and every single one of us, says that I've created you for a purpose. And if you'll give me your life, I will show you a life you could never imagine. Proverbs 3:6 says this, in everything you do, put God first, and He will crown your efforts with success. There's so many other promises in the Bible that says God wants to bless your life and bring abundance in your life. But it requires you to say you're willing to give your life to Him. So those are some of the reasons why we should commit our lives, and those sound like pretty good reasons. He made me, and you know, He knows what's best, and if I want to be successful and enjoy life, of course I would do that. And as obvious as that is, why don't we freely do that? Well, let me show you some of the barriers that often happen. And some of these are pretty obvious. Some of them that you and I have struggled with most of our lives. The very first one is some people, they have a resentment toward God. They're mad at God. And we get mad when we don't get our own way. There are people that think of God as a giant vending machine. I put in a prayer and out comes what I want. It doesn't work like that. Or genie. You know, genie has to give you your wishes, but God is not a genie. And just think about this. If you got every single thing you ever wanted, you would be the biggest spoiled brat in the whole universe. And there are a lot of us, we think we know what's best. We think we know what's right. And so we get mad at God when He doesn't give us what we want, or we hold it against Him. You know, I prayed, God, you know, make her fall in love with me. And when she doesn't, I get mad. Or you know, make this person stay married to me. And when it doesn't happen, I get mad at God. Or God, don't let my friend die. And when it happens, I get mad at God. I would say, if you don't get anything else today, God, hear this, God is not your personal genie. And He cares more about your character than He does your comfort in this life. He knows what is best more than you and I think we know what would be best. And rather than being resentful toward God, we need sometimes to look in the mirror. Because a lot of the problems that we get frustrated with are ones we've caused ourselves. I talk to people all the time, and they make one stupid decision after another, and by the time it's all done, they're mad at God for what happened. In fact, no surprise, Proverbs says this in 19:3, people's own foolishness ruins their lives, but in their minds they blame the Lord. Well, God, you could have stopped me from doing that. But God gives you a free will. And He allows you to make decisions. And one of the decisions we make is whether or not we're going to give our lives to Him, or whether we're going to hang on to it ourselves. So there are people who are mad at God for various reasons and don't want to give themselves to a God they're mad at. Second reason are the distractions in our culture. This is another huge reason. I mean, there's something happening all the time. We get busy. You know, life gets in the way. We get caught up in the world systems. And you know, I'd love to be in church, but there's this event happening, and baseball and soccer and all this other stuff that has taken us in different directions. Or, you know, this is my only day off, so I really need the time to be able to mow the grass. I need time to do all kinds of things. And we also talked a couple of weeks ago about the fact that for far too many of us, we get distracted with what the world says is important. The possessions and the pleasures and the prestige. Living the good life, wanting to be part of the American dream. We spend all our time trying to get those three things, and we end up missing out on God's purpose. I will tell you, you can't discover and fulfill God's purpose for your life at the same time pursuing, trying to get more stuff, trying to feel good and enjoy pleasures all the time, and then having people look up to you. And if your ultimate goal in life is getting more of those three things, you're going to miss out on why God put you on this earth. Mark 4, Jesus gives us a list of some of the distractions that keep us from committing ourselves completely to Him. He says, the attractions of this world and the delights of wealth and the search for success and lure of nice things come in and underline this, crowd out God. I mean, Jesus even said, no one can serve two masters. You're going to love one or hate the other. And if your focus is on the things of this world, it will be more important to you than the things of God. So distractions can keep you from fully committing your life. Then number 3, there's a desire for independence. And again, we live in the right country for that. I mean, we have the Declaration of Independence. We you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're all about being independent. We love songs. We idolize songs that that talk about this. You know, I don't care what you say, this is my life. I'm not going to sing the song, so some of you know the song, Don't Fence Me In. And I've got to be me. And of course, the great theological classic, I did it my way. Now, can you imagine getting up to heaven and facing God, and God says, what have you done with my son and with the purpose that I gave you for your life? And you say, no, God, I did it my way. God says, oh, wait a minute. Now, let me get this right. You know, I gave you your life. I gave you your purpose, and you're going to tell me you did it your way. Someone ought to write a song, I did it Yahweh. Jewish for God, those who don't know that when I said that. You know, but independence is something that many of us struggle with. We want to be, you know, on our own. We want to be strong. We want to be successful. We want to do it our way. And for so many people, that's what life is all about, being in control, being independent. And unfortunately, it can also lead to a lot of loneliness. When you've wanted it your way all the time, and slowly you turn around and look and you realize you're all by yourself. You know, that's part of why God created the church. Because we're not supposed to be Christians on our own and independent. He made us to be interdependent. To depend on one another and to form relationships, because there are times when I need help from my family, and there are times that you need help. And God knew that that's the way life was going to be. So He doesn't want us to be so independent. He wants us to know how much we need Him and how much we need one another. There's some who don't even want to admit that they need anybody, including God. We can figure it out on my own. Just leave me alone, I'll figure it out. Love the Proverbs 10:8. The self-sufficient fool falls flat on his face. Sounds like a tongue twister, but so true. And then the fourth barrier that keeps me from giving 100% of my life to God is one we've already talked about a little bit, and that is fear of commitment. Probably the most common barrier. You know, I'm afraid to make that commitment. It's kind of a scary thing. And, you know, if I do that, I'm going to lose my freedom. I'm going to lose all the fun in my life. You know, all the fun goes right out, because if you're a Christian, you can't be fun. It can't be fun. You know, I'm going to lose my friends, and what if people start thinking I'm a religious nut? You know, we have all these fears that if I completely give my life to God, that it's going to be something awful. Or I also know that I make commitments all the time and I mess up. And when you make a commitment to God, you need to be serious. And so if you make a commitment to God, then you better be ready and not stumble. But I'm going to tell you as your pastor, let you in on a little secret. It's not if, it's when. You are going to stumble when you make a commitment to God. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. You're still a work in progress. You can give your life completely to God, and there are going to be times when you blow it again. We hear this all the time. We know that this is the case. And you are going to make mistakes and fall. And committing your life totally to God doesn't mean you're going to be perfect for the rest of your life, because you won't. But God will help you. And He'll help you make decisions. Now, too many Christians are still holding part of their lives back. And it's so obvious to others, and it can be very painful when somebody points this out. You know, we don't like for people to point out the obvious that is in our lives. our music director, Philip, he all the time goes to different sites, and one of them he frequents is called the Babylon Bee. And this past week he knew I was going to be speaking on commitment, and he just happened to come across this little funny article, so he sent it to me. I wanted to share it with you. This is, it's titled Hymnals Updated with I Surrender Some lyric. Those of you, we'll walk through this. United States hymnal publishers from around the nation confirmed Wednesday the release of new updated hymnals containing a new version of I Surrender All, among other refreshes and enhancement. The new version of the tune, entitled I Surrender Some, was written to refresh outdated language and theology contained in the 1896 song, according to hymnal authorities. Continuing on one more. Singing words like, all to Jesus I surrender, just isn't in line with modern Christianity. Now Christians can sincerely belt out lines like, some to Jesus I surrender, some to Him I conditionally give, without worrying if their hearts are really line up with the lyrics. It was our desire to preserve these time-honored hymns while also making the lyrics so much more singable for the modern audience. Other changes were confirmed with new hymn titles like In Christ, for the most part, Be Thou My Homeboy, and How Great I Art. Now, we laughed at stuff like that, but it's kind of painful when you realize just how accurate that is. Because for too many of us, singing I Surrender All, in all honesty, is not the truth. We end up holding things back. And in fact, for too many Christians, they search the Scriptures looking for loopholes. They don't want to learn too much about Scripture. And rather than, again, making a complete commitment to Jesus, they hold back. Now, a lot of people, they have a hard time giving up control. Some of you have said, I'm one of those control freaks. I got to be in control. But let me let you in on another secret. You're not in control right now. That's why you have problems. What are problems? There are things in your life you can't control. Because if you could control them, they wouldn't be a problem. So, you know, part of emotional maturity is when you grow up and realize that most of your life is beyond your control. You can't control your kids. You can't control your spouse. My wife shakes her head each time I say that. You can't control the economy. Most of the things in our lives are beyond our control. And no matter how many self-help books that say that you can master your own life and master your fate, the reality is you have little control. So why not put your life in the hands of the one who can control it all? The one who is able. You know, it's a myth to ever think that you're in control. The source of all of those fears that I've talked about, they have one thing in common. And the one thing is that we don't understand who God is. We don't realize how much He loves us, because if we did, we wouldn't be afraid of Him. We would realize just how important He is in our lives. You know, the Bible says there is no fear in love, and that perfect love casts out all fear. And even when I read the passage from Jeremiah 29, and God says, I know the plans I have for you. Again, we're so worried about what might happen instead of putting ourselves in a place where God can bless us completely. all the barriers that I just went through, and that was not an exhaustive list. But all of them are excuses ultimately. Ecclesiastes 11:4 says, if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done. I've talked to Christians that, there's going to come a time in my life when I give it all to Christ. I know it's coming. I know that there's going to come a time when I give Him all of my finances, and I give Him, my children. I give Him all of my ambitions and dreams and my past and my present and my friendship. I'm going to do that sometime. And I will tell you that I have seen too many people come to the end of their life and sometime never happened. Too many of us have been putting this off for far too long. And God wants us to give ourselves completely to Him. Now, a lot of those barriers, you also noticed a common theme, I hope. Things like people's own foolishness ruins their lives. A fool only thinks about having a good time. Self-sufficient fool falls down on his face. Are you picking up a theme there? Yeah, God says somebody who is not going to trust Him is a complete fool. You and I are called to put our lives in His hands. Proverbs 9:6 says, leave behind your foolishness and begin to live. And when you put your life into Christ's hands, when you dedicate all that you have and all that you are to Him, you then begin to understand what it means to really live. Now, how do I make that kind of a total commitment? One of the first things, and Jesus even says this, that when it comes to following Him, that you and I need to count the cost or compare the cost along with the benefits. Jesus said that, there we go. Jesus said that in Luke 14. He says, don't begin until you count the cost. And He was talking about following Him. In every commitment that you make, there are things that's going to cost you, things you're going to sacrifice, but there are also going to be some benefits. And it's kind of, go ahead with a piece of paper and figure out what it's actually going to cost you. And I did this a little bit. If you would, take a look that if I commit my life to Christ, let me share with you 3 things that it's going to cost you. The first thing it's going to cost you is that I give up my right to do whatever I want. I give up my right. Now, that's kind of a misnomer that it's my right, because it's not my life. It was a gift from God. And so it's really not a right. It's a privilege that He's given me. And so one of the things I will do is, rather than thinking I'm in control, I give up that control and give it to God. So it's going to cost me my selfishness for my own life. Another thing it's going to cost me is control of my resources. Now, some of you said, oh, there's the money thing. I knew you were going to get there. Hey, this is between you and God, and between me and God, and between every Christian and God, because He knows how important our stuff, and especially our money, is. And this is one area that too many of us still have never settled an issue with. We oftentimes talk about, giving God our time and our talents and our treasure. And we think that that's a multiple choice answer, which one I get to choose. God says, I want all 3 of those. I want to be Lord of all 3 of those in your life. So again, and the other reality is that you and I, God gives us those things. Everything you have in your life, He gave you. And you get to enjoy it for what? Maybe 60, 70, 80 years, and then all of a sudden somebody else is going to get your stuff. It's not yours. We just haven't figured that out yet. So if I make a total commitment, I know I'm going to have to give up control of my resources. And then number three, I've got to give up this idea of chasing after what the world says is important. Again, the world says that there's so many other things more important than God, the church, more important than me knowing what my purpose is, and it will distract me. So if I'm going to give my life to Christ, I've got to be willing to give that up as well. But I also want you to take a look at, if you don't give up your life to God, what it is that it's going to cost you. If I don't follow God's purpose for my life, number one, I lose the ultimate meaning of my life. I'll never discover what God created me to be. And I'll drift through life from one thing after another, and I'll get to the end of my life, and I'll die on my deathbed, and I'll never have a clue why I was here. Second thing that I'm going to lose is the joy of expressing what God made me to be. You know, there's one of the worst feelings in your life you can have is if somebody uses you for their own gain. You know, some of us have been used. It's an awful feeling. But I'm going to tell you, there is no greater feeling when God uses you. For too many people, they're going to miss out on the joy of watching what God can do in their life. And then the third thing they lose very often is this idea of eternal life and even eternal rewards. Now, why would I say that? Again, we're going to stand before God, and He's going to ask, did you accept my Son, and did you follow the purpose that I created you for? And you're going to say, no, I did it my way. And He says, well, guess what? Up here in heaven, we do it my way. And you can have it your way, so you can be on your way. And why would you want to be in heaven anyway? Because you haven't spent any time getting to know the God who created you. Point is that there's a price no matter which way you choose. But when you trust God, you're going to have to trust Him also, number two, to help you keep your commitments. I know people who will say, you know, what if He asked me to do something hard? What if He asked me to do something I really don't think I can do? I'm standing up here because He did the same thing to me. When I first received Christ, if you would have told me then, guess what? You receive Christ, you're going to be a pastor, and you're going to be standing up in front talking to folks, and you're going to be sharing your faith and everything else. I'd have looked at you cross-eyed and said, no way, not me. But funny things happen when you put your faith completely into His hands. You watch how He begins to work in your life. And there comes a time in your life that He says, all right, guess what I've been preparing you for is to do this. And you say, I can't wait. You're going to find things that you never thought you could do. But guess what? You are not alone. And you need to trust God to help you keep that commitment. Psalm 37:5 says, commit everything you do to the Lord and trust Him to help you do it. And He will. Philippians 2:13, it is God who is at work within you, giving you both the will and the power to achieve His purpose. What if I make a commitment and I can't keep that commitment? It's not your job to keep it. It's your job to make the commitment and to trust God. Look at what Paul said to Timothy. God is able to keep that which I've committed unto Him. God will keep the commitment that I have made. I don't know how he's doing it with somebody broken like me and somebody messed up and somebody who keeps making mistakes, but I'm committed to him, and somehow, some way, he is going to use me. Out of curiosity, and I know we've got a pilot here, how many of you have ever flown on a plane? One of the scariest things for me is takeoff, because there comes a time when you're screaming down the runway and there's a point of no return. And either you're going fast enough to take off, or there's going to be a big mess at the end of the runway. And I know that. And I'm praying, pull it up, come on. It is a scary thing. I want to say that there are far too many Christians who like to stay on the runway and rev their engines up just a little bit from time to time. And we've never trusted completely to take off and to trust that God will cause us to be who He has always wanted us to be. My question to every single one of us is, have you given your life completely to Christ? Now, there's some of you here, I know, you would say, oh, let me get up and tell them how it's happened to me and what my life has been like. But I also know that there are a lot of us who, this is one of those subjects that I wish I wouldn't have come to church to hear, because it's uncomfortable. So let me just ask you, what's holding you back? What's holding you back from giving 100% of your life to God? Has there ever come a point in your life when you made that wholehearted, unreserved, complete commitment to your Creator and His Son, and said, God, I am giving you my entire life, and I'm going to trust you from this point forward? You know, God has so much more for us as His children than we could ever imagine or dream of. And I'm challenging every single one of us today. If you haven't made that commitment, I want you to know you're missing out. And rather than, let's think about it another week down the road, or let me go home and pray about it kind of thing, how about today? How about let's settle this issue right now? Let me ask you to bow your heads with me. Lord, I thank you that you're somebody who knows me, and you know how scared I am, and you know the reasons that I've struggled with, and you know how I want to hold back all the time. And yet, you love me completely. And your word reminds me over and over that you know me best, that you made me. That if I want to know fullness in this life, that I need to give my life to you. And so, Lord, I give you who I am, all that I am. I don't want to hold any area back to you today. I ask you to come in, take complete control of my life, and I want to be the person that you've always wanted me to be. And Lord, I know I'm going to mess up from time to time, but I'm going to trust you to love me and to forgive me and to point me in the right direction. And Lord, may the rest of my life be the best of my life. Hear our prayers. In Jesus' name, amen.